Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. It's lovely to see everybody, some familiar faces and names. It just takes a few minutes for everybody to come in. This is the always awkward part of Zoom, which you think we'd all be used to by now, but it's the awkward part where everybody's kind of joining a little bit and getting involved a little bit. So please join us. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Rachel and I'm part of the Creative Entrepreneurs Club. And it's so lovely to see you. Oh, Lee, I just spotted you there. Hi, it's lovely to see you. This is a kind of relaxed session that we do once a week, and I host the Elevenses once a month, and it is a joy to do so. And the idea is that we grab a cuppa, if you want, grab one or not. We sit down and we have a conversation just with interesting people about interesting things. These sessions are recorded and we put them up on the Creative Entrepreneurs Club website so that we can look back at them, we can get some top tips for success and some engagement if you want to. If at any point you don't want your screen to be on, feel free to have that shut down, and feel free obviously to come and go as you like. I love some people doing it in the background. I did have somebody in one of my sessions last week who was making pickles and soda bread, which was fabulous, because I think at this time we engage and we learn, we're communicating, we're being in a new environment. So do whatever makes you comfortable in this environment, please do so. Just to remind you that we are on Zoom, and so we do have a chat box. If there's anything you want to ask, any questions you want to ask, any comments you want to make, please feel free to do so. If you're not an active member at the moment of the Creative Entrepreneurs Club, again, I would encourage you to do so if it's something that you want to, but also want something to explore. We have groups, we have opportunities, we have job boards. Myself and other colleagues are available for one-to-one conversations and chats. And the idea is that we're building up a network. We're hoping to upskill, to engage, to empower, and really to bring a sense of community across the creative industries so we can help each other and develop as we go. These are strange times. I'm not going to use the word unprecedented because we've dealt with that now, but these are strange times. So please reach out. If there's anything that you would like to have as a topic, or anything that you'd like to be featured on the Creative Entrepreneurs Club site, please let us know. We react and develop everything in partnership with the community. So that's all of my chat, just letting a few more people in. So this morning I am delighted to welcome Charley Gavigan to our Elevenses. I'm in the privileged position of Charley also being a friend as well as a colleague in the world that we live in, and it's always a joy to speak to her. She's somebody that has a wealth of experience and a real deep understanding of some of the challenges and some of the trauma that is going on at the moment. And we're going to chat all things female leadership. We're going to have a chat about some strategies for success. Charley's an amazing coach, so if this turns into a slight therapy session for me, I will apologise up front. This is always a meaningful conversation when we get Charley in the room. But please, there is no such thing as a silly question. I would encourage everybody to engage if you want to, or just sit back and relax. I'm just going to keep an eye on things, Charley, because there's lots of people coming in and people go out. People can come and go as they like, and I think that's part of the new way that we live and work. I'm actually in my office today to get things organised and ready, so that I took everything home yesterday thinking we were going to work from home from now on. Had to come back in to organise a few things, so I don't, like everybody else, is like I'm only going to one place, but I am a bag lady wherever I go in this current environment. So I'm in the office today, but so I don't have any children interrupting me. Normally I do have children that just want to know what's going on, so there's none of that. There's no cats, there should be no squirrels, so we should be all good to go. Great, so there's 16 people joining us. Thank you so much. Charley, it is always lovely to see you. What's been going on with you in lockdown?
Well, just to say thank you for inviting me on this, and hello to everyone who has brought their coffee or tea this morning. Yeah, I'm delighted to have this opportunity to talk to you, Rachel, about just where things have been. Obviously, when things started in lockdown, we as therapists, coaches, were experiencing a lot of people talking about, oh my goodness, what they were anticipating was coming. And a lot of workplaces were very, very interested to, engage with us. But what happened was, and this is what we often find, is that they didn't actually take the leap. What they did was they talked a lot about it. They talked a lot about how they could support their staff working from home, a changed environment, supporting people with their own private fears and worries. Because let's be honest, what people were living with prior to lockdown, you bring that stuff with you, into lockdown. It doesn't just evaporate. It doesn't just go away. And so we had a few months where we were pushing on a kind of closed door, we have to say, with a lot of organisations who wanted to be seen, and I'm probably going to be quite radical here, but they wanted to be viewed as right on, as mental health allies. And they talked the language, but they didn't actually step up to offer what people actually needed. And, for me, that's really important. And I think that you use a word which is new to me, which is pivot. And that's what we did. I'm with Brave Your Day. It's myself and my husband. And we have a whole lot of accredited therapists and coaches that come in and out and work for us as associates. We pivoted what we did, because in the past we would go straight to larger based organisations and support staff, volunteers, board members, people in the community, people that were using services. And because that just wasn't happening, we then decided to go back to reaching out to individuals in our community, and also looking at, particular areas that we were interested in. So like young carers, young women, at the moment we have a lot of 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old young women who feel that what's on offer through the NHS, there's too long a waiting list. Yeah. So again, like I'm imagining everyone that's here, it's about responding to need and about looking at what can be offered directly. So it's such an interesting, where we're at.
Yeah, it's such an interesting topic as well, because I think, speaking as someone who is particularly driven as an individual and would consider themselves resilient, the environment that we were thrust into in early March was, there was part of me that was a bit of a holiday camp vibe going on. Like, oh, this is great, this is new, I can handle this. And then slowly as the months went on, I felt more and more tired. Yes. But I couldn't articulate why. And we were just chatting before we came on the call that it's October next month, and actually I still feel like I've almost achieved nothing in the last 6 months. So there's all of that mixed emotion coming in. And so I'm interested in, Charley, is, one, it's maybe a silly question, but I'm hoping that that's normal.
Yes.
And also too, like, how do we kind of build ourselves up? What are our strategies for success? I think isolation has always been such a big issue in our communities, but now that it's affecting so many of us, it's like it's being brought into sharp focus. Yeah. So my question to you is, one, is that sense of exhaustion a normal feeling? And two, like, what are the things that we can talk about or think about that we can deliver? And how do we create, in this bizarre environment that we're now all used to, how do we create a sense of normality? I know that's quite a lot in there, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so we're in autumn. We've just arrived in autumn. I don't know how it is where everyone else is, but it's a beautiful, beautiful bright blue sky here in Glasgow. I'm actually relieved after yesterday's, constant media that we've woken up to such a beautiful sky. Autumn is normally therapeutically recognised as a time to let go. And I think that for a lot of people, they're still holding on to a lot, but they're also trying to make sense of, I'm doing it myself, they're trying to make sense of what has happened and what And where are we in that? And what do I think about that? Because that's the important question. What do I personally think and feel about whatever is happening for me? So recognizing what is going on in our body is absolutely imperative. But often what we have done as people, because of the amount of distractions that are in our lives now, is we have lost touch with our bodies. So Rachel, for you to be recognizing that tiredness, that fatigue, that jadedness, that is a signal to you. That's your body saying, whoa, hold on a minute here. And it would be for you to, and this might sound a bit kind of witchy, or, you know, kind of, some people call therapy or coaching a bit touchy-feely, but ultimately it's about actually getting in touch and hearing, what is it my body is trying to tell me? Because if you think about it, and you know, all our work that we do is based on the fact that Colin and I have recognised that we have been terrified all our lives, and that's where Brave Your Day came from, because we recognised that the common denominator that often we kind of, the nub that we got down to with most of our clients was fear. And if you think about the fact that, and it probably sounds a bit cliched, but ultimately, you know, we're not running from a saber-toothed tiger. We're not, you know, trying to get away from a leopard nowadays. We're not going to get hit over the head with a big, you know, by another cave person or whatever. But ultimately, our bodies are still signaling a lot to us about be alert, be aware. And that's why in our work, a lot of the time, what we are doing is supporting people to understand fear as an ally, rather than it being something that you have to get away from. And that's quite a weird thing to be talking about. But ultimately, as I know myself personally, the terrifying things that I faced in my life, the only way I've managed to face them is to actually recognise the terror that I actually feel in my body, and to understand where it lives in my body, and then to work out for myself baby steps for how I can support myself with it. Now, the reason that I say that, Rachel, is that we are the model that we work to is person-centered. So we are not advisors. We do not give advice. We do not give tips. We do not do tricks. We do not do techniques. We are about listening, hearing, and listening to what is not being said by people. And when people are in a situation, and it's the only way that I can describe this, is that if you are in an environment where you feel safe, maybe for the first time ever, because the other thing we recognise is that a lot of people have no comfort zone to leave. Mm-hmm. They are in a constant state of terror. Now, whether it's they're living with violence, or whether they have trauma from the past, or whether they are just like in a constant anxiety that they'll have no money in their bank account tomorrow, and they don't know where they're going to get their next penny from. That constant living in that, and having a safe space to actually vocalize for the first time and hear your own words out loud, can be such a powerful thing. And that, Rachel, as you know, in your leadership role, is like, for a lot of men and women, what they're doing is they are starting to own their own story. Mm-hmm. But they're also starting to understand their old story. Mm-hmm. And I know this because I've done it. The amount of bloody work I've done on myself, and I tell you, it is a lifelong project. But and I'm 50, coming up for 54, but it's like, this is, you know, what this all stems to. What is the story that I keep telling myself about myself? Mm-hmm. So you talked about, you know, that word resilience or stamina, or what, you know, I always think that they're like blah, blah, blah words, because they're kind of words that we've learned. Yeah. And, you know, you see it on Instagram posts and all this kind of stuff. It's like, what does it actually mean for somebody? Mm-hmm. And I think even finding out what that means to someone is really, I mean, it's such a powerful thing. Mm-hmm. Because for some people, they don't have the elastic bandwidth to keep going. And, you know, in the work that I do with people, it's ultimately supporting people to work out for themselves what they can do to get through the minute, the hour, the day. Mm-hmm. I learned that myself. You know, my previous partner, I nursed him until he died. And I was like 37. And I think about what I actually learned about myself then. And it was just about, how do I get through the minute to minute? Because ultimately that's all we've got. Mm-hmm. And there's no point in me giving a little elastoplast and saying, go and do this or try this or whatever. People have to actually have the space to to work it out and hear it reflected back. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and that kind of thing. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting because it's funny because when we first entered into the lockdown scenario, and I've said this a lot of times, so my dad passed away a couple of years ago, and the emotion and the grief and the way that I felt then was familiar to how I felt when lockdown started to kind of really take a toll. And I was like, oh, I know this, right? Okay. And so I was like, straight, you know, try eternally positive as I am, as you always know. I was like, oh, great, I know how to handle this now. I was made for this, right? Great, brilliant. I can get my sleeves rolled up. But it was a really odd feeling. And it was a really odd feeling of being openly vulnerable in that space, especially when you're in a leadership position, or you're in a position of trust, or a position where people need you to behave in a particular way or perform in a particular way. So it was a rather odd feeling to open up, to be that vulnerable and say, you know, my father's death is the thing that's going to get me through the next 6 months. And people were like, yeah, okay, crazy lady. You know, some people were like, need to back off a little bit. That's not the kind of conversation we want to have. And other people were like, oh, well, this is what's happening to me. This is how I feel about it. But I mean, I think, when we spoke about this before, you know, I think sometimes if you're a female leader, the sort of that being open about that emotional space can be a little detrimental, because sometimes people don't take you that seriously. And I just wondered, you know, you've spent a lot of time over the last 6 months with lots of different leaders and lots of different people from lots of different spaces. You know, is there commonalities coming through? Are people just, you know, feeling and delivering in different ways? I mean, what's going on?
I think that you know, what you're describing is beautiful. You know, the connection with loss and actually what its expanse is huge. And whether it's like we've lost our job, or we've lost a dream for, I don't know, we had an exhibition coming up and it's now not happening, or that we've actually lost a fellow human being, it is, you know, it churns up so much. And, you know, the people often talk in metaphors.
Yeah.
In the work that I do, and I love that, because as I told you, Rachel, I was at one of these weird, I'm from Dundee, and I was a really weird experimental Montessori primary school, which is bizarre because it was the city council that decided to pay for it. And I did that, you know, from nursery right through to primary 7, and learned to be creative in a different kind of way. You know, it was pretty hard going to secondary school, but it was like, it was you know, to be able to see the world in quite a pictorial way, and in quite an expressive way and creative way, I think as well supports people to also go deeper sometimes with things where they are feeling really exposed. You know, and I have witnessed so many metaphors from leaders in the last 6 months. And I'm talking about, you know, I mean, the way that I would talk about leadership is that it's leadership across all of life. So for me, it could be a single mum, or it could be, you know, it's about people that are leading in their own life. It's about people who are leading a social enterprise or whatever. It's so broad, but ultimately they're all human. And the things that I found, a lot of those women, if I could kind of say what my top things were, that themes, I suppose, that came up there, was one of the themes that keeps coming up is, as you say, about how am I viewed by other people? And that's been, and in a way it kind of gets in the way. It gets in the way of me being myself, because I'm constantly on my radar thinking, oh, what are they going to think of me if I say this or say that? And am I going to get a hard time? And so what people are then having to take a few steps back and look at is, how do I actually, what is it that I believe? What is it I believe? What are my values? How am I living those? What's most important to me here? And how do I find my voice in order to express those? And I think also the other piece that links with this is that a lot of those women are also grappling with, what have I given away of myself in order to fit in? And that has actually been, that's been almost like a constant. I was talking to one of my fellow coaches yesterday, and we were talking about the fact that the actual discussion about COVID has never actually come up in any of our sessions in 6 months. It might have come up, you know, about things to do with furlough and not managing to, you know, get any grants or funding or whatever, you know, that side of it. Absolutely nothing about the actual disease. Everything has been about issues that people have kind of dampened down on, and almost been trying to wear, you know, this brave face constantly, and having to appear to be a leader that is juggling everything. And actually, you know, what do we, you know, I mean, I'm a coactive coach, which has a belief that, you know, leadership, part of being leadership is, you know, vulnerability, demonstrating that, modeling that is actually far more powerful. And we've seen that with the New Zealand Prime Minister, we've seen it with the First Minister. We're actually kind of coming clean and saying, I don't know. I do not know. I can't give you an assurance. And, you know, and I think that even in itself, I'm sure that there's a whole dialogue behind that goes on behind the scenes, about, you know, I don't know, not feeling worthy, not feeling that you're up to the job, imposter syndrome, I don't know. But all those things are the types of things that come up, I would say, in most of the sessions that I have with people.
I mean, I think a phrase that was brought home to me a few years ago now, but that always sticks with me, is get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that always terrifies me. That there's always a moment where in your stomach you can feel it and you're like, oh my gosh, I've got to go forward. But it's kind of, I've sort of trained myself into accepting that actually I need to trust my abilities, or I need to trust that I have thought this through well, or I need to trust the sort of smarts that I've got, that this will be okay. But if it's not, it's not. And I think there's so much uncertainty at the moment that trying to, as you say, try to fulfill all the roles that everybody has in their life, be it work or family or otherwise, it feels like a different level of pressure at the moment. And it's kind of, it's interesting because you know, I've got a really good friend who we talk a lot about this, and I'm kind of done with lockdown. I'm like, we're in it now, we're over it. I rolled my sleeves up as soon as I could be able to start doing what I think I do best, and that's getting out there and working hard for the communities that we serve. But my friend is just like, I don't know how you're, you know, I don't want to FaceTime. I don't want to be involved. I can't do that. You know, how can you try and be positive in this environment? It's really stressful. And I think it's just understanding that balance and how do we kind of move forward. But more than ever, the type of support that you offer or the type of conversations that we have, they're so important. You know, we're not going to move forward without acknowledging some of the real challenges that are going on around us. You know, we're people, we're storytellers, we're involved in stuff.
I think what you've said is really, really important. I don't think it's about making comparisons.
Yeah,
it's certainly not about saying, oh, well, I'm doing it. I mean, I came from a family like that was like, you know, you just get on with it, you know, unless your legs are hanging off, you get on with it. And, you know, and it's so damaging, you know, because everyone is so different and everyone brings a different perspective, a different history, and I think that it is so damaging to be assuming that everyone will be going at the same speed, and that's not how it is. A lot of what my work and our work at Brave Your Day is about is actually just being with people in their hopelessness. I've not got a Harry Potter wand to make it better, but often just by having a space that isn't actually, you know, we don't hold an agenda. We don't know the person's full life. All we know is we are meeting them in the moment for them to be able to express that hopelessness. And then from that, they have that opportunity. Often what happens is that they sometimes find that little door that has a tiny chink of something coming through it. And, you know, really that's all of us have.
It's so interesting, Charlie, because, you know, that's about strength, not about weakness. So it's about opening that up, isn't it? We actually talking about that hopelessness or that challenge, that difficult scenario. And difficult scenario, you know, everybody's got their own truth. So whatever that can be big and it can be small. But being able to kind of turn that into strength rather than failure, I think is something that we need to not get our heads around. I don't have the words, but you know what I mean.
You know what? We've all of us have stories in our lives about where we've been, what we've experienced, from small children right the way to where we are right now. All of you listening and watching will know what is the trigger for you, what is, you know, the pain point for you. But you will also know what you've already weathered. And, you know, I think that's the other thing that is beautiful about when you're at the stage and you're able to, and I know I've been in therapy, I also continue to have a coach because I think that's important for me. It's really important to have that space where you can have the opportunity to think about, if you are at that stage that you want to start to write your news story and create a chapter for your news story, because you're, and excuse my French, but you're fucking pissed off, you're fed up with the old story, you're fed up being anxious, you're fed up with whatever. I hear that a lot from people. And, you know, they get to a point where they're like, I'm just so scunnered with this. I want this to be different. And often having the opportunity to almost metaphorically look in the mirror and understand what you've already weathered can bring that strength, even though it's tough. For me, it was, I recognised, you know, being an only child with no family, you know, being with my partner until he died, having to nurse him and try and work, then having to do his own funeral, all that stuff, and then go back to work 2 days later and no one even asked me how I was. You know, that for me, I now have turned that into a positive. And you can do that with a lot of things. You can do that with, someone said to me recently, oh, I'm very argumentative. And it's like, right, so what's the positive in that? And it was, well, I know my own mind and I'm alive. I feel alive when I'm putting my point across, and I've got a passion, and at least I know what side of the fence I'm on. And, you know, and it's like, people can then start to understand themselves and have a relationship with themselves quite differently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I'm fascinated by that because it's something that, you know, I spend my life speaking to people and engaging with people, and I love it. I have a real curiosity for understanding how people learn and behave. And my ultimate focus is to help people flourish in their own business. But in order to do that, you have to really know yourself, and you have to know your limits and your strengths and your weaknesses, and use them all positively as ways. You know, we've far too long we've worked in that deficit model where if you're really good at something but you're really poor at something, especially in the world of business support, if you're poor at something, you spend your ages working on the thing that you're poor at to get it up to speed. And I'm always a bit like, do you know what? Sack that. Do you know, if you're poor at it, why give yourself that hassle, that grief, or that challenge? Or, you know, yes, by all means, work at it if you want to, don't dismiss it. But imagine if the stuff that you're good at, you became awesome at that and just completely pushed yourself forwards to get to the point where that was it was non-negotiable, that you were really awesome at that and you felt good about yourself and you felt happy. And I think, you know, that's always a really difficult conversation to have with leaders who are just like, what are you talking about? You know, I should be working on this side because it's challenging. And actually, you know, we're sort of, sometimes I think we're trained in being unhappy in that environment. And what I think has sparked off in the scenario that we're in now is that things have come to a head. So it is much more about the value that your contribution is making, and can we make that the best we can be. And I have a real concern that, you know, given the news of yesterday and the challenges we're going to be facing, but actually we're now being pushed into getting back to normal, whereas actually we're all now, as you quite rightly said, it's a new story. And it's a new story for lots of people, and a new story. And this is me, you know, very un-Scottish of me, like, let's be awesome at what we're awesome at. And let's do, like, you know, the things that we're not good at, fight. There'll be somebody else who's brilliant at that. Let's find them and do that together. You don't have to do it all on your own.
Yeah, I mean, I worked, as you know, I worked for 32 years in the charitable sector, and I was on the team that set up Childline in Scotland, and I worked in Women's Aid for a long time, and yeah, I've worked in the community. And the thing that I recognised was that often what happens is the duplication that goes on is so it's almost like territorial, and it became for me so suffocating that people were not willing to give up their turf. And ended up in a situation where people were, you know, well, they were competing for funding and all that stuff anyway, whether it was through fundraising or whether it was through actual you know, funder routes. But I think that for me it was like it went against what all the values were. It went against what all the focus was. And, you know, I loved at Childline that it was just about supporting children and young people in trouble and danger to have confidential counselling. I mean, I just loved that it was simple, really simple. And I think that's what's happened. Obviously, we're in a, you know, a procurement, tendering, all this stuff that the industry that's growing up around how people access money in order to deliver what they see as absolutely gapingly obviously needed and is from the grassroots up is it has become a kind of industry. And I think that's why for me I just needed to step off the bus, because it was like it was just, do you know what, it was making me ill. In my own head. It was killing me. My own thoughts and beliefs about it were, you know, they were killing my own spirit. And I think, like you, Rachel, the opportunity to then work out what you can do, like, you know, I think a great question that often people ask themselves in coaching when I'm working with them is, what do you think of yourself? And it's just a little kind of inquiry exercise that people do. And people are often amazed when they do a kind of free form writing for, say they set their clock for 6 minutes and they just write what they think of themselves without actually having any critique of what that is. They just write it and then they review it. And actually, it's our uniqueness that we're often frightened of. What we bring in ourselves, and you're all, you know, I'm looking at you all there, and you're absolutely gorgeous, and you're so all different. And, you know, even the way you have your houses and everything is just, I mean, that's the only bit about Zoom that I really love, is the fact you get to see into people's houses, and it's like through the keyhole. But it's like, it's just that recognition that we are all so unique. And so why would we not be then, as you say, looking at, you know, with the kind of support that you offer in helping to actually craft, you know, the drill it right down to the focus of what people are creating, you know. And I'm actually probably doing it a disservice, because I do recognize that what people do is so unique, you know, whether it's poetry or songwriting or, you know, whatever it is, sculpture or whatever, you know, some of the stuff that has been being created during this time, and recognizing as well that, you know, the whole emphasis of art is often to be channeling our pain, you know, as human beings, this life that we're all living. And that's why at Brave Your Day, we talk about, you know, the support that we offer is for people who have problems in living, because that's what we have. We're just still trying to work out, what is this life that we've got here, you know, and how do we keep putting one foot in front of the other?
And that's where collaboration is so important, isn't it? I think now, more so now than ever, there's been a recognition that if we are going to make progress going forward, that it's collaboration, not competition, that is going to get us through. But that's a tough call, because I mean, you know, you collaborate with people that you trust, and you collaborate with people that you like, and you collaborate with people that you have, you know, that can give you value. And, you know, if I reflect on what life was like a year ago, even, sometimes you had to collaborate with people because they had to be in the partnership, or they had to be part of your world. Now it feels like there's been permission granted to say, no, we're going to collaborate with people that make the difference. I mean, I was saying, we've heard me say this before, when we talk a lot about it in here, is, you know, we work with the living, we don't work with the dead. And what I mean by that is not physically, I mean, physically that would be tough, but what I mean by that is actually, you know, we work with people that are up for it. You know, if you want to work as hard as us and be engaged with what we do, and be generous and kind, and I think that's a word that is being a wee bit overused but under actioned on. You want to be kind and generous and be part of an environment where you enable people to flourish, which we all should be, then you know, collaboration is tough. It's not an easy ask. And I think in the current climate, you know, for me, certainly, I've seen a lot of people's true exposure coming through, where you're like, nah, their values aren't for me. That's fine, and you can go and do your own thing, but I'm gonna continue in the direction that I want to live my life. But that feels like a bravery chip I've found somewhere that I never even knew I had. And I'm not a shrinking violet by any stretch of the imagination, and I didn't even know I had a bravery chip somewhere. It took me, you know, a yonks to find it.
I think that's just fantastic, but it also, I think, is mirroring a lot of what, you know, a lot of people are saying, no, I don't want that old life anymore. And that is a risk, you know. And what happens is, it's almost like our ego whispers to us, you know, oh, you know, you should be up there, you know, with all the kind of the names that are known and blah, 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 because if you're not, then you won't be seen. And, you know, I don't know what goes on, but it's like, I'm imagining that that's the kind of thing that we end up whispering to ourselves. And then it's like, a risk is like, you know, I don't know if people know Ur Willie, you know, I'm a Dundee girls, so you know, DC Thompson's is what I grew up with, but our Willie used to have like a wee devil and a wee angel. It was like a wee version of him with his dungarees on each side of his shoulders, and it would be like the devil would be saying, go for it, Willie, go for it, you know, and then the wee angel say, no, don't go for it. I think that they are, you know, people have those kind of chips on their shoulder. You know, we all have those things getting whispered to us about whether we should take that next step, and whether we should, you know, go in one direction or another. So, you know, the thing about yourself, Rachel, is that you've always been seen, and you've always stood by what you believe and what is a value to you, what you stand up for. And you know, and that, I suppose that's what I'm hearing, that you're now saying, I'm now standing up for, you know, I want to work with the people that I want to work with. And I think, you know, that's no different to Colin and I. Yeah. That's what we've decided to do. We've decided, why waste your energy on, you know, organizations or, you know, slick companies that like to kind of use the lingo, but don't actually want to actually action and move things forward for people.
Yeah, totally. And I think you're right. I think action is the key thing going forward, isn't it? Is taking those steps forward, how big or how small, it doesn't really matter, but you're taking them forward and you're actioning. I think that's really important, and I think people can draw real strength from that.
And I think as well, you touched on this at the beginning about this kind of productivity porn that's going on, you know, where people have been, you know, kind of at the beginning of lockdown, you know, it's like everybody was, I mean, goodness knows how many people were talking about what language they were going to learn and what they were going to be doing and whatnot. And actually, there was huge swathe of the population that was just like, shit, how am I going to live? How am I going to get through the day? You know, because I'm not on furlough. I haven't got, you know, I've fallen through the crack of any kind of government support. I'm like, you know, so I think that, you know, for a lot of people, they then, and as you know, I'm not a huge social media person, but I do recognise that, you know, that it's a huge pressure for people, you know, and even though people are looking at the images and saying a lot of this is kind of fantasy, it still feeds something in us as human beings about, am I succeeding, am I failing, am I, you know, and whatnot. And that's why I was saying, you know, that this whole ownership of who we are and having the time to think about that is so powerful, but it's so, like, I mean, transformative beyond any words. I know I am that woman. I made huge decisions in my late 40s that have changed the path that I'm on. And I'm not talking just about work. I'm talking about people that I decided made me ill. I decided I didn't want in my life anymore. Real decisions that still terrify me, you know. But for me, that's the kind of thing that I recognise. I can now say I recognise that was a really scary but courageous thing that I did there, you know. And that's why we would never, in the work that we do, tell someone to be brave.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. No, totally. And I think it's really fun. It's really fascinating because, you know, we spend so much time communicating in this way. And there's a huge part of me that I love it, because you can speak to people all over the world now. We can speak to people that we could never have access to before, and that's brilliant. But my God, am I fed up looking at myself? Like, there's a bit of me, and every time I go on, I'm like, what's my hair look like? I never noticed that before. And I'm thinking, I mean, I don't have any makeup on today, and it's just been irritating me since I walked in the office. And I don't wear makeup. Those of you who know me, I don't wear makeup every day. Really irritates me because I'm so used to looking at myself, and there's an exhaustion that comes with that. And trying to embrace that in today's world is really tricky. because it feels like you've got all these distractions like just coming right at you the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you stay focused, Charley? Because you're one of the most centered people I know, and but you're constantly working at it, and I get that. Mm-hmm. I am absolutely shiny new button. I mean, there's no, there's a few people here that know me well, and I like to be first. Like I am. It's like, I've not got the energy, there's like, what's going on there? All you need is like a red flag. You just need to say, Rachel, I don't think anybody's doing it that way. I'm like, right, I'm your woman, off a flash. But to me, just to embrace that as a positive thing rather than a negative thing. But equally, it's like, how do we just manage all of this madness and like all the distractions that are coming at you that you just, I'm sure like everybody here, that I get up sometimes and go, I just cannot do it today. Mm-hmm. And it's how long that lasts. And I've been timing myself actually, but just a wee bit of maybe too much sharing, but time myself going, actually see on a day where it takes me more than like a couple of cups of tea to get myself like going, all right, I can do it today, fair enough, like whatever. If it takes me more than 2 cups of tea, then I just don't do it that day. I kind of do something else for a while till I feel like I can. You see, the first few kind of weeks and days in lockdown that I was experiencing, that the guilt of not doing like 10 hours a day work was just eating away at me. And it took me ages to work out that I'm in control of this happiness or not. Mm-hmm. And, I'm sure like everybody here, like we're all smart people, like we can make those decisions ourselves. So why, I was just fascinated. It's like, where's my block coming from? Why is this all kind of coming at me? Does that sound,
that's it,
again, does that sound normal? It doesn't, it makes me sound like I'm glad to see people like the measurement of cups of tea. I swear by a measurement. Anything that can, 2 cups of tea and you're still not living it, that's the day done for me.
Rachel, you're grasping for this, sense of normality. I think it'd be weird if we weren't feeling this way. I really do. As human beings, we have, believe it or not, it's like we have uncertainty in our lives every single day. Well before the pandemic. The only thing that's happened is that the pandemic has thrown up a whole lot of other things that have disrupted everything. So all the plans that we had in place, whether they were to do with work or family or celebrations or anniversaries or whatever it was, dreams, hopes, aspirations, ideas of success, all this kind of stuff, that was all mapped out. We had it all mapped out. And I suppose, again, it's back to this thing. It's back to that thing about that philosophical reminder that we're all going to die. And I think that reminded me when we kind of got into lockdown, and like most people, for me, it was overwhelming. It was a real time of anxiety. It was, I was having to think, how do I support myself with this? Because for me as well, when you're a leader and you're someone who has always been supporting other people, often what happens is that it's very difficult to be supported yourself. That's why leadership is such a lonely place for so many people. And I think that, it was the weirdness of how you feel about, dealing with the uncertainty and everything, and about having times when you're like, I can't do this. That is a wake-up call to us all, and the more that people can express that, the more powerful it'll be, because then it won't feel like this kind of dirty secret that we're kind of holding on to. Because I think that for a lot of people, that whole kind of belief, and I've been there myself, having, led, large charities and whatnot, if you're not cramming every single minute of the day. And I know that what's happened is that, people are now just cramming one Zoom after another, but it's like, if you're not cramming every minute of the day, then, you're not worthy. And I think again, it's about going back and trying to cut yourself some slack and to work out, where does that come from? Because I know where that message comes from for me. I know who used to tell me that in my family. I know how it was said to me. I know how punitive it was. And I also know how conditional it was. And when we're really conditional, it's like how the language that we use on ourselves as well, the shoulds, the musts, the need to, that all is very conditional language. And what happens is that we then hem ourselves into a corner, and no wonder you end up knackered. And knackeredness, as we know, the physical knackeredness, the emotional overwhelm, that's how people become ill, So it is about trying to work out where does that message that I'm telling myself about not creating space.
And also it stops you moving forward in such positive ways as well, isn't it? So if you procrastinate about something and you say, oh, I should be doing that, and you stop yourself from doing it because you should be doing it, it's like it's a counterintuitive, it's counteractive, isn't it? Because when often people say, oh, I should be doing this, but I'm always curious as, well, why are you not doing it? Because you're telling me you should, but you just keep telling me, rather than I'm going to do this and action it. And sometimes we're scared to be as brilliant as we can be.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot in people. I'm like you, Charlie. I get to spend my day with incredibly talented, wonderful people. There's a few numpties in there, right? But we're dismissing them as we go. But some just all overall brilliant people who are just scared to be that brilliant. And I always really struggle with that, because I just often want to say to people, I wish you could see what I see. And often I do, but you want people to kind of take that leap forward, don't you? And just see potential in people. You want them to
yeah. And that's when I spoke at the beginning about the I suppose the therapeutic model that we believe in. We believe in the person-centered approach, because it is about a recognition that people are not broken. They do not need fixed. They actually have everything they need in order to create what they need, as long as they have unconditional support that isn't judging, isn't about agenda setting, is actually safe, feels that you have a trusting relationship, then the power of that to actually unravel your own stuff is phenomenal. I know, because I work with some absolutely phenomenal people, men and women. And, we're talking about, people from 13 right the way through to like 77 at the moment. And, all people who have decided, to try and understand their relationship with themselves. Because if we are taking the time to think about what we actually believe about, ourselves and our lives, and it's back to, what you said, Rachel, about when you turn the volume down on all the external stuff and you just focus in on what can I do, that's ultimately all I do now. When I'm really fucked off, right? Yesterday was an example. All I did was I decided I would just take the dog for a run. I went to the bottle bank, and boy, have they been breeding, those bottles. But it's like I went to the bottle bank and then I took the dog for a run. And that for me was, as much as I was going to do. And it was about focusing on something that was important for me. And it's just
but not holding on to it as well, isn't it?
No, not making a big deal about it.
You get annoyed with something and you don't want to hold on to it because it just eats away at you. But I think we find that very difficult not to hold on sometimes. to little niggles where you go, oh, I remember that person made me feel like this, or I
Yeah.
remember that environment made me behave
Yeah.
like this, and it's just kind of
Yeah.
away.
So that is just a constant core thread in the work that I do with people, helping them to actually identify, where did that voice come from? Was it male? Was it female? Was it reprimanding? Was it, you know, what was it? Tell me what that voice is. How did it sound? What was the tone like? And then to diminish it. So if that voice, right, so someone says, oh, that was my PE teacher, or that was my whatever that said that to me. How long ago was that? 37 years ago, right? Okay. So what is it that they are saying to you today when you're, you know, 57 or whatever, and you're trying to, you know, be creative, but you can't because you've got this shite going on in your head. And then they say, well, you know, and they're then starting to understand when these different voices come in, because we're all, I can't remember how many questions it is that, or kind of thoughts that we have. It's incredible. It's like thousands of thoughts we have a minute, you know, even, that are burling in our heads. And ultimately, sadly, that's the enemy that we have to battle, which is why it's so important to work out our own strategies for how we deal with it. So for me, and this might sound a bit glib, but, you know, I actually have one of those kind of gremlin voices that I have that I've tamed, is that I've reduced, I know who that person is, and I've reduced them right down to like a cartoon character. So I see them as that when they start kind of coming in. Other things are, you know, for me is, I often think, well, what would my gran say? Because I only had one gran that I really, really felt close to, and I really miss her every day. And I just think, what would Phyllis say, you know, about this? And I know she would be like, oh, Charley, you know, you should have, you know, and it's like just even having that conversation with myself that is more supportive, rather than, oh, bloody hell, we have enough hard times as it is without giving ourselves a hard time. So, I mean, that's that. Yeah.
It's interesting. We sometimes we have a very Scottish way of looking at things as well, don't we? Because we're terrified of failure, but we're not keen on success. So, you know, a whole range of operating in the mediocre middle compounds all of that. And when we're talking about all this stuff, it's even harder to get through the cracks.
And Rachel, that it brings us full circle back to when we own our story and we work out what's the old story that we keep telling ourselves, what's the new story that we want to write for ourselves. And that could be a few pages of a chapter, just even to get us to next week, or, you know, to tomorrow or whatever. When we decide that, then we are also, we're paying attention to what we value and what we stand for in ourselves to support ourselves, which ultimately means that we're being seen, we're standing up for ourselves. And that's all any of us can do.
Well, Charley, believe it or not, that's 12 o'clock. That is our session over, and that's a perfect way to end. Thank you so much for your time and your honesty, as always. For those of you who joined us, thank you so much, and thank you for the lovely comments in the chat box. Lots of good tips and tricks and feedback as well there about what we're going to take from this session. Please do, you can connect with Charley at the Creative Entrepreneurs Club site. And you can connect with me there also, and if you want to book some time with Charley, you're able to do so, and you can find Charley at Brave Your Day on all the usual social media places.
Thank you.
Please do, you're very welcome, Charley. I hope we get to do it again very soon, and please do connect in with everybody that if you want to on the group. If you're not an active member of Creative Entrepreneurs Club, we'd love to hear from you. These are the kinds of informal chats that we have. We hope that, that there's inspiration in there, there's food for thought, and also there might be things you want to action. So if we can help with that, then we certainly will be able to do so. I hope so. So you guys have a fantastic day. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
And I'll see you in November sometime. Take care. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.